Good morning, everyone. My name is Swami Devaki, and with me is Chaitanya, and good morning to those online. This morning's reading is from Rays of the One Light, and these are commentaries from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda. Do you need a guru? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Many people scoff at the idea of having a guru. True to human nature, generally, they make a virtue of their scoffing. I am responsible for what I do, they announce. Responsible for my mistakes as well as for my victories. What would I ever learn if I handed over my development to someone else? To depend on one another for guidance would be an act of spiritual cowardice. It would be understandable for someone gifted with some trivial ability, for instance, with words, to insist on doing his crossword puzzle himself without letting anyone else help him. But supposing even in such trivial matters he had no such gift, what virtue would there be in refusing to learn? For that matter, moreover, where do our gifts come from? They are not a native ability. Still, crossword puzzles are hardly an important challenge. What if a person wanted to do something daring, to climb a cliff, for instance, but refused to study the art of mountain climbing? He would climb at the risk of his own life. And how much more is risked than physical life in the great adventure of the divine search, where the risk is to salvation itself? Where is the sacrifice in seeking guidance? Even a mountain guide would presume to do one's climbing for one. His purpose would be only to help the neophyte to climb safely. To have a wise guru is not a sign of weakness, but of plain common sense. All the saints, aware as they are of the hazards of the adventure, agree on the importance of having a guide or guru. And these are the heroes speaking, not cowards or spiritual weaklings. Jesus emphasized the importance of having a teacher by asking John to baptize him. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 3, we read of his coming to John. And thus Jesus said to John, "It becometh us to fulfill all righteousness." In the Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter, Sri Krishna says, "Open thyself to those who have attained wisdom. They will be thy teachers. Ask questions of them, both verbally and mentally. Serve them faithfully and with devotion." How is the devotee to recognize one who has attained wisdom? The Bhagavad Gita gives us this inspiring description of the sage. By this sign is he known, being of equal grace to comrades, friends, chance comers, strangers, lovers, enemies, aliens, and kinsmen, loving all alike, evil or good. And thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. So the word guru is a word that we use throughout our culture rather carelessly, actually. We have the guru of science, the guru of math, the guru of music, the guru of plumbing. And in India, the word guru means teacher. And in this context, it has a much deeper meaning. Because the guru for us is someone who knows God and someone who can take us to God. He knows the terrain, he knows the path. He knows the way to lead. And so, the guru is, when you have become the disciple of a guru, which I think many of you in here are, disciple of Yogananda's, he is infinitely patient with us And this is not just a one-shot deal, one time, this incarnation, Master's going to be your guru. This is a commitment through eternity. The guru is 10 steps ahead of us. He knows what, he sees us coming, and he knows our karma, he knows our thoughts, he knows everything about us. And you may as well just accept the fact that yes, your commitment to him, your connection with him will go throughout eternity, and you will not find God. You will not find God except through that channel. And that is a hard thing to wrap your mind around, because so many people, especially in our culture, resist the idea of a guru. But that's the divine law. They start with you from conception, and I don't mean conception in the womb, I'm talking about conception in your incarnations. And that's hard to wrap your mind around. It's hard for us, we believe in reincarnation, but the thought that I started out as a rock, or maybe I moved into the role of a skunk or a gnat or whatever. It's hard to grasp that. It really is. It's much deeper than I think we realize. But we understand it on a superficial level. But the point is that it's not an intellectual thing. It's not about reasoning this whole thing out. And believe me, I've worked at that. I have looked for every loophole I possibly could find, praying and asking Master, are you my guru? Is this what, and then accepting it. And then it comes back in, are you my guru? Going on and on, always looking for some kind of reassurance that yes, this is the truth, that I'm still needing to follow this path. And as I said, the guru is incredibly patient. He sits there and he watches and he sees us like a parent sees a child. We fall, he picks us up. We don't even realize that he's picking us up. But he is. And he's there with us. And he's guiding us every step of the way, to the point where we can become actually conscious of the fact that he is really guiding us every step of the way. And he will take us on through our enlightenment. Now, we think that we can study scriptures. There are people who can get very advanced, get very far with studying, with skirting around, using different classes or different techniques. There's a lot of wonderful techniques out there. There's a lot of wonderful teachers out there using different ones. And ultimately, we have to settle on our connection with the Master, which is Yogananda. There was a man who betrayed Yogananda in his life, and he actually had betrayed him incarnations prior to that. And Master said, he will never get to God except through this instrument. And then he said, and he will reincarnate, and in 3 lifetimes he will become enlightened. Such is the way of the divine. It's not something that we can necessarily intellectualize or understand. And Swami said to Master, Master, have I been with you before? And Master said, oh yes. And he said, how, for very long? And Master said, well, let's just say for a very, very, very long time. And this was a little disconcerting to Swami. And he said, well, Master, is this how it is for all the disciples? And Master said, oh yes. He said, they come to me and then they get distracted and then they move off. Oh, this relationship might take them away, or this teacher, or this or that. He said, and then I lose sight of them for a while. But then ultimately they have to come back. And there was a woman who was at Mount Washington with Swami. And Swami said she was vibrant. She was filled with light, filled with energy, filled with light. And she went to Master one day and she said, I would like to have another teacher, a different teacher. And Master looked at her and he said, okay. And he didn't put up a big fuss. He didn't condemn her. He didn't try to put a guilt trip on her. And he just said, okay. He said, then I withdraw my ray. And Swami said that a few years later she came back, and it was quite sad because he said she'd lost her magnetism. She no longer had any magnetism, and she was just rather ordinary. And he said it was because the Master was sustaining her. And that was their connection, and she kind of threw it away. And so, what about us who, we beat ourselves up over and over. It's a bit of an irony here, because on one hand, you want to move yourself forward, but you can't beat yourself up over it. And then on the other hand, you want to accept the fact that the Guru loves you and that the Guru is there for you. But it's a balance of understanding when you need to push yourself and when you need to relax and just say, my life is yours, Master. I'm imperfect. I know I make mistakes. And surrender to it and just accept it. But he is there loving you every step of the way. Master said, if you knew how much God loved you, you would die for joy. If you thought about all the things that have happened in your life and started to review them and realized they all come from love. The discipline that happens to us through our karma, it's all coming from love, trying to get us to course correct so that we move in the right direction. That's really all it is. It's not about guilt. It's not about blaming yourself and saying, I'm an awful person. I'm terrible. How long have I been, treading on this mill? It's not about that. Because Master says, it's okay. I'll wait. I'm here for you. Don't worry about that. If we feel guilt at all, it's only to propel us to move forward so that we look at our lives. He says, don't think about the future. Don't worry about the past. Unless the past can help you reevaluate and move forward. I met a man several years ago who was a lawyer, and he and I developed this conversation and this connection when I worked at the bookstore in Palo Alto. And he told me that he was probably around Swami's age. And he told me that when he was a young man, he was at a lecture of Master's. And Master came up to him at the end and he tapped him on the shoulder and he said, come see me afterwards. And the guy didn't. He didn't go. And you look at that and you think, wow! And he looks at you and goes, whoa! But he says, I was young. I was really young. He said, I had just gotten married. But you know what? That man had the karma later on to be, when they exhumed Master's body, he had that karma to be present. They needed a lawyer. They called on him to exhume Master's body. He was 15 feet away from Master's body. He said, I saw a tiny, tiny bit of decay in one nostril. That was it. And he went on and continued on in his life to do nothing but serve the Guru. And that was his karma. And it came back around. I'm not saying we want to diss those kinds of opportunities, but have faith. Have faith that when he says, I'm your Guru, that he's still working with you. He's going to bring you back around. He's much bigger than this body. Swami Kriyananda was much bigger than this body. Not all of us have the karma like Master had with Sri Yukteswar to know who he was, to fall at his feet when he first met him. Just like Swami had the karma when he went to Mount Washington. He got on the bus right after he'd read Autobiography of a Yogi, and he got on the bus and went there. Went right there to see Master. Now, how many of us can say we've done that? Probably not too many of us. But Swami was tested, And Swami, even when he got on the bus, he first went to Mount Washington, he went to Encinitas, and the first person he met was Sister Gyanamata. Now, Sister Gyanamata is Master's most advanced woman disciple. And when Swami knocked on the door, went in, she saw him. She thought he was a utility man. She was going to send him around to the back of the building. And he said, no, I'm here. I want to see Yogananda. Well, as he talked more to her, she got a little cool, because he said, I jumped on the bus, I came. She said, well, have you done the teachings? Well, no, I just jumped on the bus, I came. And she said, well, it takes 4 years. You've got to go through the lessons, you've got to go through the teachings, that you don't just come here and just automatically say, here I am, accept me. And he was really put off by that, as most of us would be. And he said, well, now let me go to the Hollywood church. So he went to the Hollywood church, and he was on the bus ride there, and he's thinking how presumptuous she was. And then he realized, he said, I became aware of the calmness that she emanated and the depth in her eyes. And he said, at that point, he said, I asked for God's forgiveness. And I said, I realize now what an advanced soul she is. Please forgive me. He said at that point, he could feel that he had been accepted by Master. So he gets to the Hollywood church, and he goes in and he meets a receptionist. And she looks at him and says, well, he says, I've come so far, I've come from, I've traveled this distance, I want to see Yogananda. And she said, well, that's impossible. She said, he's booked out months in advance. There's no way you're going to be able to see him. And he said, oh, but I've come so far. And she said, well, have you done the teachings? And she kind of perked up, and he was so dejected, and he started to move off and sit down. And then she said, look, she said, because you've come so far, let me go and see if the Master will talk to you. So she went, and Master said, yes, he would. And when he met Swami, he sat there for a while, and he meditated, and he asked Swami a few questions. They had a little chat. And he finally said, I accept you. You have very good karma. But it was obviously not without a few tests on his way there. And he asked Swami, will you give me your unconditional love? And Swami said, I will. And he said, will you give me your unconditional obedience? And Swami, having to be honest, because that's who he was, he said, well, he said, I suppose I think you're wrong. And Master said, I will never ask anything of you that God has not had me ask. So, Swami realized at that point in his life, what brought him to that point was his desperation, because nothing else was satisfying him. And so he was desperate to find something else. And he said, Master, after he said to him, I will never ask anything of you that God will not ask me, he said, when I met my master, Sri Yukteswar, he said, allow me to discipline you. Why, sir? Because, he replied, in the beginning of the spiritual path, one's will is guided by whims and fancies. Mine was too. And Sri Yukteswar continued, until I met my guru, Lahiri Mahashaya. And it was only by attuning my haphazard will to his wisdom-guided will that I found true freedom. In the same way, if you attune your will to mine, you too will find freedom. To act only on the inspiration of whims and fancies is not freedom, but bondage. And only by doing God's will can you find what you are seeking. I see, I replied thoughtfully, and then from my heart I said, I give you my unconditional obedience. Master continued, when I met my master, he gave me his unconditional love as I have given you mine. And then he asked me to love him in the same way, unconditionally. But I replied, "Sir, what if I should ever find you less than a Christ-like master? Could I still love you the same way?" And Master looked at me sternly. "I don't want your love then. It stinks." "I understand, sir." This was Swami speaking. I assured him he'd struck at the heart of my greatest weakness, intellectual doubt. With deep feeling, I said to him, "I give you my unconditional love." And he went on to give me various instructions. And he said, "Now then, come and kneel before me." And I did so. He made me repeat, in the name of God, Jesus Christ, and the rest of our line of gurus, the vow of discipleship and of renunciation. And next he placed the forefinger of his right hand on my chest over the heart. And for at least 2 minutes his arms vibrated almost violently. Incredibly, from that moment on, my consciousness in some all-penetrating manner was transformed. I left his interview room in a daze. And a few moments later, Master came out from behind the open curtain on the lecture platform, smiling at us quietly, and he said, "We have a new brother." Now, Swami would often say, "I am not the guru." He said, "I don't know God, so I'm not the guru." He said, "But I can be a channel for Master." And as he advanced in years, later in life, and as he advanced, you could tell he was advancing spiritually. And his life really reflected one of nothing but bliss towards the end of his life. So I would venture to say he knew God at that point. But he would often say, I'm not the guru. And I was listening recently to a talk given by Nandi Cornell. She passed away a few years ago. She's one of the ministers. And her husband's a man named Bharat, who many of you know him. He's a world-renowned naturalist. Anyway, he told her this story about how biologists are studying the communication that happens with trees underneath the surface of the earth. And what they realize is that trees nurture each other. There is a network happening, and they will send nutrients to each other to sustain life. And there will be like a large tree, which would be like the mother tree, and she will be sending out nutrients to less smaller trees. And there was an aspen that in the winter, of course, the aspen would lose its leaves, and there was a little aspen sapling underneath her leaves that she was sending nurturing to. She was sending energy to. And when she lost her leaves, then the little plant would begin to send energy back to her. And that's the nature of this existence, is how we all work to support each other. And it's the same with the guru. We have to give back to the guru. And one way, of course, to do that is to serve his work. And Ananda is very much a part of Master's work, because I fully believe that Swami was indeed a channel, and then through transference, energetic transference, Swami then transferred energy onto his students. But it was always the guru's power. It's like the guru acts as a tree, so that the branches come out, and from the center of the tree is that nourishment, which is the guru. And then he sends it out through his disciples, and they carry with them that transference of energy. And so many of us say, I've heard this before with a lot of people who come in, "Oh, I wished I had been around Master," or "Oh, I wished I had been around Swami." It was not so easy to be around Master. And even Yukteswar said, "I will send you to the West, because Westerners, they cannot receive me." Yukteswar, our Param Guru up here next to Master, was Master's guru. He said, I'm not the right temperament for the West. They need someone like you. You have a personality, you're more personable, you're very devotional. People can relate more to that. They wouldn't relate to me very well. And then Swami, or Master, chooses Swami, who is very relatable. Swami writes books on finances, on yoga, on music, on creativity, goes on and on. Something for everybody that we can relate to. And so he then becomes the transference of energy, and he sends it on through Jyotish and Devi, who are householders. Swami very much was, even though he at one point was a householder, really I think if you asked him, he would see himself monastic. So there's something for everybody on this path. And it's by design. It's not by accident. And Master was not easy to be around. I was at a talk one time that was celebrating one of our anniversaries, and there were a handful of direct disciples at this talk, and one of them was Master's nephew. And he said that he was at a satsang with Master, and this man came to the door, and he stopped at the door jamb, and Master looked at him and he said, don't come in. He said, stop. Don't come in. I don't want you in here. And the man looked at Master, and Master said, don't come in. And the man said, I'm sorry, Master. And when the man came and was standing there, his face was disfigured, which is what Swami's nephew told us. And when he said, I'm sorry, Master, his face transformed. And Master accepted him in. So it wasn't easy to be around Yogananda. You better have your P's and Q's going in the right direction. And Swami Kriyananda was very, very high energy, very high energy. It was difficult to be around him. You had to really raise your energy to be around him. So don't disregard, though, what they have left behind. Jyotish and Devi, one day everyone's going to lament not having known them. Oh, I wished I had known Jyotish and Devi. Oh, I wished I had gone to the village more. Oh, I wished I had done this, wished I had done that. Don't let me underestimate what you have here in Sacramento. I can go over to one of the shrines over in the community and sit in front of it, and they're incredibly powerful. Don't underestimate that. But it's all about not so much the intellect. Let go of the intellect. Let go of, was I a rock or was I a skunk? Surrender to what the Guru gives you and let him lead you, and he will. And I'm just going to conclude with this beautiful piece of music that we sing at Ananda, and it's O Master, and it says, the time has come for us to see that there's but one reality upon the earth and high above, the truth that all was made from love, a love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Guide all our hopes and all our dreams past every glow that only seems into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we are all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. So do we need a guru? Well, Swami would say, no, unless you want to find God. Chaitanya and I are going to sing this song that was written by Swami Kriyananda for the peace treaty, and it's a song that was written. There are two lovers who are young lovers who act like they're kind of like the Romeo and Juliet of the play, and she's a musical person and he's a poetic person. So he's written a poem for her and she puts it to music. But the words are, if you listen carefully to them, it's not about human love. It's about divine love and what the love that he sees in her, which is, and some of the words are, dearest, when I think of thee, heaven opens, and I see shafts of light upon the earth. All then seems of noble birth. Kindness then appears divine. Human error then benign. Goodness rules the universe. Men a higher love rehearse. Dearest, when I think of thee, heaven opens and I see shafts of light upon the earth. All then seems of noble birth. Shafts of light upon the earth. All then seems of noble birth. Kindness then appears divine, human error then benign. Goodness rules the universe, men a higher love rehearse. Goodness rules the universe, men a higher love rehearse. Thoughts of you my peace assure, calm my heart and make it pure. Even so your actions screen all in life that's base or mean. Even so your actions screen all in life that's base or mean. Dearest, when I think of thee, heaven opens and I see shafts of light upon the earth. All then seems of noble birth. Shafts of light upon the earth. All then seems of noble birth.